welcome, and so the idea now is that we will be starting and talking how remote work on working from home is going to be impacting and has impacted the entrepreneurs community, the startup community, and so the idea with this second webinar is that we get the best experts in the world who have both, let's say, structural and strategic advice, and also more practical and tool-based advice. Yeah, that together we can have a discussion today, and after the 50 minutes we can get some actionable advice. So the idea is that we will have a few questions, first 25 minutes, and I will start with Megan, if that's okay, then following with you, Oriane, and then following with Liam, and then Tom. So that will be the order for the first questions. And then we'll do like more a panel, and then we'll have a Q&A. Yeah. I really want to thank you for making the time. I know that we're in different time zones, and I am myself in CET, so now it's 4 p.m. But I know that we have most of our speakers on the other side of the Atlantic. So yeah, I really want to thank you, and I have heard already some very good discussions initially. And the idea is that we have a very good session. So I have seen now that people starting to join. So welcome everybody. And really, as we were discussing right now, we want to welcome you to the second set of webinars that we have put together with the European Young Innovators Forum, and to really provide a very concrete and actionable information for our community. So maybe I can give you some background on what we have been doing so far, and this is in the next slide that we will be showing you on how we are bringing together a set of expertise to provide concrete answers to our community. So today we are in the second workshop, so remote working amidst a global pandemic, and I really want to welcome you all. For being here, and in particular for our speakers who are really world experts that are making the time to support the community. And this is, personally speaking, one of the most important things that I have seen in these few weeks is how people who have a track record, people who have a real experience and are ready to help and are ready to jump in to support some other people in the startup and entrepreneurial community, but not only. We have seen this in society. So moving on. So myself, I'm Nicholas Zilbergleit. I'm the president and co-founder of the European Young Innovators Forum. We have been around now for 10 years, and we are one of the leading foundations for youth innovation in Europe, one of the 12 organizations that are ambassadors for Startup Europe. And so we want to welcome you all. This is part of our set of webinars that we are offering to our community. And one of the key programs that we have built so far is the European EU Women Roadshow, where we are supporting women founders to connect with investors all across Europe. So far, we have got almost 600 applications in 10 different cities in Europe. But what has been amazing has been the engagement from our international local partners, almost 160 partners, more than 50 speakers and 120 mentors. So most of our community, and in particular the work community, I'm very happy to welcome you all also online, because I have seen you and met you all face to face in different cities. So today, we have just 50 minutes. I don't want to take too much time. I want to welcome our speakers, and really I want to really thank you for your time. So Oriane Pannelier-Tarieul, who is product marketing manager for Grow with Google. Yeah. So she has a concrete and practical experience how you can use different Google tools, but let's say, productivity tools in order to grow your company. So that's why we have contacted Oriane, and also she's very much engaged in diversity, which is a key policy issue for us. Megan Dilley, who is the director of the Remote Work Association, she is joining us from the Bay Area. So thank you very much for making it so early. Liam Martin, who is core, has many titles and many success stories. And he's a co-organizer at Running Remote. That was the first remote working conferences, and he will tell us a bit more about that. And Tom Ronen, the head of customer success at Monday.com, one of the leading productivity and project management tools. So as you can see, we'll be combining strategic and more practical advice. And so I want to welcome you all and thank all the partners that have been supporting these webinars and all our work that we are conducting all across Europe. So the first question I have for all our speakers, and I would like you also to introduce yourself and tell us about you and your background, but please tell us, you have been a great advocate of remote working for a long time. So how do you see yourself as an expert and your business and your advocacy? How has it been impacted by the current crisis and the current situation? So I will start with you, Megan, and welcome.
Thank you, Nicholas. Really happy to be here today. So I'm Megan Dilley. I'm the director of the Remote Work Association. We are a global organization for global advocates and business leaders and thought leaders in the remote work space to come together and fuel the future of location flexible work. Our goal is to ensure that companies are adopting remote work in a sustainable way. Anyone can adopt remote work, but to do it well is a totally different story. So that's really what we're focused on. And I think looking at, I should mention, we also launched an initiative called Keep the World Working recently. It's the COVID crisis. So if any of you out there are looking for resources, help from experts, we have a subject matter expert pool of consultants who are ready and willing to help and provide free resources, free phone calls to kind of get you through this challenging time. So you can visit us on remoteworkassociation.com and get more information there. Reach out to me directly and I'd be happy to help you. But in terms of what, we're really seeing is this is the great remote work experiment, right? That we've all almost been waiting for, but we've been thrust into it more quickly than we may have hoped. And it can have potentially really good and positive benefits for remote work in general, increase the number of businesses that want to adopt remote work sustainably moving forward. But it can also be a huge challenge because people are doing this suddenly and in an emergency situation where they don't have access to the right tools and resources. Their spaces don't accommodate them to be productive and have even a desk space. So there's a lot of potential for things to go wrong as well. So we want to help ensure that we can help as many people as possible in the interim, kind of come up with solutions that can help them survive, right? This is different. This is not what remote work is supposed to look like forever. So we want to make sure that we can help people now and then also build long-term sustainable plans for the future.
Thank you, Megan. So you have a lot of work, as far as I understand right now. So Oriane, so welcome, and just continuing on this, how do you see the overall impact on what you are doing, and how do you see this the crisis in your particular work?
Yeah, first I wanted to thank you for sending the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, to introduce myself. So my name is Oriane. As you may hear, I'm from France, and I'm currently usually based in London. I'm working for Google. I've been at Google for more than 4 years now. But I'm currently in the French countryside, surrounded by goats, rams, so it's definitely not the usual working environment. However, I'm definitely a strong advocate for remote working, and I have been doing a lot of remote working for the past years, and definitely Google is very engaged into having the best capacity for employees to do that and to be flexible as much as possible, because we do feel like it's something that can help increase your productivity and overall your well-being. So we'll talk more about well-being in the coming minutes, because definitely something that is I'm very passionate about and is very important for us as a company. In terms of what I'm doing at Google, so I'm a product marketing manager for Grow with Google, focusing on the EMEA region, so Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And I'm working in Grow with Google initiative. So Grow with Google is helping everyone getting skills to build their career, to grow their businesses, or simply grow their confidence. So it's free tools and training, both offline and online, that we provide for people to help upskills and succeed online globally. So in that situation, we were having both online and offline content. And obviously in coronavirus situation, we mostly focus on providing offline content. And you can find more information about all the tools and the tips and the training we offer if you just check Grow with Google website. Also Think with Google. We have lots of articles and videos to help you get there and have a community that is very supportive. So that's to describe a bit the shift on what we were doing. Personally, what it changed on my everyday work life, in terms of tools, it didn't change much because we're already using all the remote and collaborative tools we have at Google. So it's more about how do we manage interpersonal relationships and well-being management that is at stake for our team internally. And I'm more than happy to share some creative tips we came together to talk about that. And thinking about emotional well-being, there's something that I think it's important to raise first, is how privileged we are to be able to work remotely. And it's completely fine if someone is anxious in such times. And it's about thinking how we can best help, making sure that we are supportive for everyone in these times, and seeing what kind of tools we can leverage about it.
Thank you, Oriane. And I really write down what you said about skills, and this is important because we are all digital natives almost, but it's true that in remote working there's a lot of people that are not digital natives, and the question of skills is very important also. So Liam, welcome. And I go now back to the strategic view and to somebody who has been an advocate for a long time on remote working and as one of the leaders in the world on this topic. So welcome and thank you for sharing your expertise.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Liam Martin, I'm currently at my bug out location. I've been here for 6 weeks. I've been in complete isolation. Things have been great. There's no goats, but there is a lot of trees around me. I'm up in Canada. And I have co-founded a few companies. The biggest one is Time Doctor, which is the top time tracking tool for remote teams. And then also a few years ago, I co-organized or co-founded Running Remote, which is the largest conference on remote work. And between those two, outside of that, I've been working remotely for the past 15 years. It's actually the only way that I've worked. I've never had a job inside of an office before. And we've been running Time Doctor for over 9 years. And inside of that, we have hundreds of thousands of people all over the planet that use our technology to be able to work remotely. So the thing that I can kind of bring in is where the evolution of remote work was before this and where we've jumped. And I have a lot of quantitative data to be able to back that up. And also what opportunities I'm currently seeing in remote work right now. I would probably say I have an article that's going to be going live tonight, which is the office is dead. Like this is basically going to be the end of the office. And I think we're going to see a massive shift in how we work. I mean, we've already done it in the last few weeks. It's just people will now recognize this over the next few months, that we're not going back to that previous way of working. And that's not necessarily bad. I think that there are going to be a lot of silver linings in this unfortunate situation.
Thank you very much, Liam. And this is a very, very interesting point, the end of the office, to build on our discussion further. I want to remind everybody, you have the Q&A, where if you want to write your questions as we progress in the discussion, you can write directly in the Q&A. I know that we have also a lot of people connected on the YouTube channel, so also you can write it over there on the comments side. And so, Tom, you are the last one, but I want to welcome you also, and really impressive what you guys have done with Monday.com and how you are making the productivity tools also something that is more approachable for everybody. So welcome, and please tell us how has it worked for you in the last few weeks?
It's been crazy. No, hey everybody. Thanks, Nicholas, for having me here. I'm Tom Ronen, been with Monday.com for the last 4 years, managing the customer success department. My team helps support and implement our tool, which is essentially a work operating system that allows teams to collaborate remotely or in the office and manage any project, process, whatever that is, and also integrate with cool tools like Time Doctor. I looked it up, Liam. We have an integration. Overall, it has been, I can say a lot has changed. So our team, I think, when we think about remote work and remote teams, every company that has offices in different locations has already been working remotely in some way. If your team is distributed, whether they're working from their bedroom like me, or they're working from an office that's offshore, then you've already kind of been infusing your team with the best practices of how to collaborate remotely. And I think what we've seen, and our company has been able to be in the forefront of helping other teams make the transition or enhance how they already work remote. And it's been super interesting to be able to support such transitions. We've been working very closely with mostly our bigger customers, but we've had many growing interest in Monday.com, and we've put a lot of resources out there to help teams manage the transition and manage kind of remote work on an ongoing basis. Myself personally, I'm no remote worker. I've been doing remote work for the last 3 weeks, or 4 weeks, that is, right now. I've been managing a fully remote team for the past 4 years, and I'm a big advocate of remote work. Hey, I can tell you that our Tel Aviv team, which is fairly large, doubled their productivity since moving to remote work, which has been just like that. And it's been an amazing thing to see. So at Monday.com, we're lucky to be able to see and witness how the world is moving, and what are the struggles that people have in moving remotely. And we're doing our best to support them from our expertise. Again, you can just go online to monday.com/blog and see a lot of resources over there. So happy to share some of these best practices later in the discussion today.
Yeah, so thank you, Tom. So you have mentioned that word, struggle, and I want to jump on struggle. And one of the first question that I had is that it's about tools, right? So there are so many tools out there, and so I want Megan. You were talking also about helping people to work remote, for example, in the tools part. So let's say I'm an entrepreneur. I have been kind of working remotely or have distributed teams, but there's so much out there. So how do you choose the right tools to work? Or is there any strategy that you can implement? Or please, Megan.
Yeah, absolutely. It can be super overwhelming. I think it all goes back to, and with anything as you're transitioning to a remote model, what is your objective as a business? What are you trying to do? Who are your stakeholders? Are we talking about just trying to incorporate, your internal team in these tools? Do you need to be changing the way that you're working with your customers and your vendors? So you need to really start from the highest level and think about what you're trying to accomplish. And then from there, really, don't go overkill on tools to begin with, would be my suggestion. Start with the basics. build a toolkit for yourself and experiment with those tools. Make sure you have something for shared document collaboration. Make sure you have something for, instant messaging like Slack, or even if you don't have access to Slack, and I know in Europe, WhatsApp is super helpful. Like, have a plan B and get people in a group together talking, because it can be really jarring to say, okay, everyone is now in their own separate spaces. We don't really know what their working hours are. You can't just go tap them on the shoulder, right? So just come up with that essential toolkit and start there. There's so many tools that might work for you. I'd be happy to talk to people individually and provide some help and suggestion on what those tools are. But I don't think there's a one size fits all answer for everyone. But just make sure you have those basics in place, experiment with them, see how they work for you, set rules around how you use those tools with your team, and communication norms. And we might get into kind of communication strategy a bit later, but that would be my suggestion.
Thank you, Megan. And maybe Liam, you were talking about working remote for the last 15 years. So I'm sure you have been through this, right? What Megan is saying. So can you please tell us a bit of your practical experience?
Sure. I think Megan gave us a fantastic overview. A couple others that I'll just throw out there. Get a really good pair of earbuds with a very good microphone. I use these. They're called the Bose SoundTrue Ultras. I have about 20 of them sitting around. The reason why I get them is because they have a very, very good microphone. Okay. I also use a tool called crisp.ai. And I don't know if any of you have used that tool before or seen it before, but it's pretty cool. What it does is it's an AI that is constantly measuring everything that I'm saying, and it samples all of the sound. So I don't know if you guys can hear that, but none of those rips are happening. You can have a dog barking in the background, you can have a baby crying, and all of that is pulled out of the live audio feed, which I think is very powerful. The other thing that I would do is get everyone to go to speedtest.net inside of your company, have them run a speed test, and then have them send you back the URL. If they have a ping of below 60 and an upload of download below 5, you need to upgrade their internet right now, because they won't be able to reliably do a Zoom call, as an example. There's going to be spots in and out. So a couple of those tools, I mean, Time Doctor as well, I'm a little bit biased, but I think that's a pretty fantastic tool. Get an external monitor. I use the ViewSonic VX32, $300, connects through USB Type-C, fantastic for productivity. I use the MX Master 3 mouse. It's about $100. These are all things that you can get on Amazon and can have probably delivered in the next day or two. And then there's the standard ones like Slack and Twist for instant messaging, and Zoom and Skype if you want to be able to do video calls. There's so many different opportunities. And I would say, realistically, I don't want to bias people to a particular tool, because whatever works for you, as Megan said, is probably the right direction. But fundamentally, it's just get your communication up as quickly as possible, and also make sure that your workers are as comfortable as possible. That's a major part that we're not really paying attention to right now, but that's going to be significant. That's going to be a significant problem in the next couple of weeks when everyone is stuck inside their homes.
I can feel that already with my chair. Yeah,
exactly. I have an Aeron chair, and I know that that's a little bit expensive, but absolutely worth the money, because I have no back pain and I can do this.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, no, and I really like your advice, because it might seem very trivial, but it's these very small things that can make your whole experience of remote working much more comfortable. Taking that, Oriane, so remote work experience, much more comfortable. So we were talking about the tools, and of course you will tell me all the Google tools, but what do you think from a general perspective tools can bring in terms of increasing competitiveness, productivity of a company? And if you have some examples that you can give us in terms of, okay, a task that you were doing in a certain way before that you can do differently, in particular in remote working?
Yeah, definitely. And I would say first that I really agree with what has been said before, in the sense that there are two things to have in mind. One is working as a team and making sure that you have all these collaborative tools to save your time, but also individually what you can do yourself to make it work. And for instance, for me, what is really valuable is to have a standing desk, which I have in the office, so I can stand, but I don't have it here. So I had to somehow do it manually, and I do have a bit of both, but it's very important to make sure you have both something set as a team and something at your level to make it work. That's first. And then in terms of examples of how the importance of tools, I would say that when you're working on docs or email or anything, and I often have to work with the US or APAC teams with very different time zones, it's impossible for you to be in meetings sometimes. So making sure that you have a proper shared calendar on what are the next steps is super important. And then making sure that calendars are visible to everyone, and making sure that all the docs are shared within the team, and you have a common drive where you can have all your sheets, documents, like everything you need, like photos of events, whatever, is key, because then it's kind of, in a way, I think there is a sentence that I really like about this situation is, we're all similarly close and far from each other, which in the end is making a lot of equality wherever you're sitting in the company technically. So if you're using these tools, it kind of creates connection. And yeah, like to me, the biggest value would be like making sure you're on track on documents instead of sending version 1, version 2, version 3.5, whatever. This is really super valuable.
Thank you, Oriane, and everybody. If you want to, all our speakers, if you want to jump in and jump on something that has been commented, please tell us. I'm going to Tom and inviting everybody also at the same time to write your Q&As, your questions on the Q&A. But we are talking about tools. We are talking about increasing productivity. Very good practical advice from Liam. Now, how do you go from I'm installing the tools to my team is adopting the tools? And I am, that's the second step. And the third step is, how do you make sure that the adoption is maintained, increased, and improved? So Tom, if you want to start, but this is addressed to everybody. Yeah.
Sure. So, and that's really where the magic happens, right? You can buy the tool, it can be great, and it can have all the fancy features in the world. If it's not being adopted and used, then it's just not going to do the trick. It starts with routines and processes. For example, if you're using a collaboration tool like Monday, like Trello, like Asana, there's many tools out there to help manage projects and manage tasks in a collaborative way. To get the adoption started, you need to create a cadence of usage in that. So an example would be, we would pull up the tool, whatever it is that we're using, on a weekly team meeting and go over that. And so first of all, everybody sees that you, as the manager, it's whatever is on that tool is important for you. And we go around and have a discussion around it. So creating these ceremonies around the usage of these tools is super important. Making a clear definition on when a said tool needs to be used is super important, especially when we're talking about communication. If you just adopted Slack and have been using email up until now, Slack is great and is awesome, but what are the things that you want to be people emailing one another, and what are the things that you want to be conversing about Slack? Because things can be very much siloed in specific platforms, and information can go away. So having a discussion around not only here's the tool and this is how you use it, technically, we also want to say for what and what's the purpose. And it's super, super important to do that. And I can tell you, it goes a long way. I think when it comes down to after defining these processes and getting people on an ongoing basis to adopt those tools need to have impact, need to have an additional value that they give somebody, and you need to make it very clear for them. So an example, if we are, Oriane is producing a piece of content with her team, and they're using a collaboration tool that now every time when the copywriter finishes the copy, automatically a notification is sent through Slack, let's say, to the next person in line. That's a huge value add that may be obvious to the person who set up that automation, but may not be so obvious for another person. And so emphasizing those value adds that these tools give to your team every day even if it's not so like in front of your face, is super important. Since we're using a collaboration tool, we don't need to spend 2 hours a week on a meeting now that everybody can see what the other person is working on. That's huge, huge, huge. And it's not so in front of people's faces when they're using these tools. And it can be super mundane. Now I ask my employees to go in and change a status box from orange to green and from orange to green and so on. But just putting that value proposition of these tools in front of people's faces, if it's not obvious, then that would do the trick in getting people to suddenly fall in love with these tools because they're doing so many things for them. So yeah, so I guess showing the additional value if it's not obvious, and then creating ceremonies around these tools and how they're supposed to be used, those are the two biggest tips for me.
Thank you, Tom. And somebody, Oriane, Liam, Megan, do you want to complement something that has been said on adoption? Yeah.
I think this kind of overlays, I have a saying, which is it's people, process, and tools in that order. And if you get that wrong, you'll actually end up destroying your business even faster. So really fantastic tools deployed by bad process with stupid people is just the worst thing that you can possibly do to your business. And I know that we're talking about tools right now, but I think that that's an important point to push home for people. The biggest failure points that I see in remote teams is communication issues and process documentation issues. So communication, there's a big debate right now in the remote work world. And again, this is something that we would talk a lot about at Running Remote, is asynchronous versus synchronous communication. So should everyone always be on and always available all the time, or should you be able to kind of disconnect and do deep work? And I'm more on the asynchronous side. I'm a little bit more on the introverted side of the spectrum, so I definitely attach myself more to that. There's a fantastic debate on that between the founder of Help Scout and the founder of Todoist, where they both have opposite thoughts on this, and they actually debate it, which is great, and you can find that on our YouTube channel. But making sure that you figure out what type of communication you're implementing, I think is really important for adopting all of these tools. And then secondarily, the deploying all these tools inside of process is important. So what do I mean by that? Well, everything that you have inside of your company should be written down, digitized, and shareable across your entire organization. There's a couple tools that you can use to figure that out. Google Docs is a really quick and dirty, fast solution that you can do right now. I personally like the two other tools, however, which is GitLab and Trainual. So Trainual is a paid solution, and it's like a training manual, and you just put all your process documents in there. GitLab is free and open source, and they also are a remote first company. They've been like that since the get-go. Dimitri spoke at Running Remote a few years ago, who's the co-founder, and he has the largest open source remote team process document on planet Earth. It's at about.gitlab.com/handbook. And it's 3,200 pages. It's everything that GitLab does inside of their company. And Dimitri encourages people to steal it. So you can literally just fork that today. You can grab what you want, and then you have at least some structure. So let's say, as an example, I'm going to do a Monday.com and a Time Doctor integration, and I'm using those two tools. Well, you're going to build process around that, and then you're going to give that to all of your team members, and you want to have buy-in through that process. So what we do is, once a new process document is up, we give it to the people that are going to use it, and we say, okay, is everyone on board with this? And if everyone is, then it becomes basically a new law of the company. And it can be changed, but it actually requires people to come in and say, hey, you know what? I think we can do this in a better way. And we change the document actively. So they're constantly organic documents, and that helps with a lot of the buy-in, especially when you're thinking about deploying a new tool.
Okay, so structure, yes. Process, yes, but most importantly, buy-in and people. Anybody else want to add on adoption? Okay, well, because we have already 11 questions, and I'm sure that you want to also ask more questions, and please don't forget to add them in the Q&A. So I'm already picking some of the questions as we can move on the discussion, and also we can start the poll that we have prepared, so we can use it also for the Q&A. So one of the first questions that we have is, and we have kind of answered that, but so general productivity will decrease or increase? What do you think? If adoption is not working properly, do you think that productivity can go down? Yeah. So what do you think about this? And a second question that I also would like you to answer is, what type of jobs do you think are more suitable for teleworking than others? So we can start with these two. And who wants to start? Oh yeah, yes.
Yeah, I feel like obviously it's hard to tell exactly what's going to be in the future, but I do agree on the sense that going to the office from 9 to 5 and having this kind of normal day is something that will happen in the past, but not in the future. In terms of future of work, for office job at least, I would definitely imagine that we will focus on working remotely more and more. And then in terms of productivity, it's about how we adapt to it. And it might be that we need to change our habits slightly in the beginning. And it might be that productivity could be a bit lower for the first weeks or months. But on the long term, I do feel like this is something that is going to increase productivity and also help to tackle some work-life balance. And I'm also thinking about the women maybe listening in the call, and that in a sense that very often they still have the burden of taking care of the house and the kids and everything. And with working from home, I guess these questions are a bit more central to how we work, because kids are around, you need to take care of the house. So there is also, I think, the whole environmental conversation and society conversation around that. How are we productive, and how are we productive differently, and how do we put everything into balance? So I do see the value in the future. My opinion, it's very personal, is that we will have an increase in productivity, and we will also have an impact on the society itself overall. I know if my camera is frozen. It seems frozen on my side. I hope it's not, but
I think it seems frozen.
Oh no, sorry about that.
Yes. But
Okay.
but we hear everything that you said.
Okay.
So anybody else on productivity type of works that adapt more to these type of remote working? Megan?
I'm no
Yes.
no prophet on the subject, but I think it's definitely like we're going to see a huge change. Things won't be the same. A lot of people are now working from home and are much more productive and are saying, "Hey, this is something that I like, and it's even it's better for my company." And it's happening all around in different positions and so on. I think for us and the software business, it's a very remote friendly environment that now people, if it wasn't obvious up until now, then people are understanding it now. And I think productivity now, maybe I agree with Oriane. I think in the short term, like it's shaky. The transition is always hard, but in the long run, once you figure it out, I think we're going to see an increase, if you ask me, in the long term. So that's my opinion on it, and it varies across different industries. It's pretty hard. But I think definitely it's been kind of, I think Liam kind of alluded to this at the beginning. It's something that's struck us all in the face right now, how very much possible it is to work remote and be even more productive.
Yeah. Megan?
Yeah, I would just add to that. I think that we all need to recognize that there's kind of two different experiences right now amidst the crisis. I think there's the people who are really enjoying this change, realizing that, wow, working remotely and from home can really work for me. I'm more productive. I have the space to do so. These are likely the people that maybe don't have children at home that they're caring for and have enough space and feel quite comfortable. And then there's the other group of people who are just completely stressed out by the fact that they're expected to get their work done, as well as care for their children. Maybe they're living in a really small apartment and they're sharing space with housemates or partners and trying to work at a, you know, a small kitchen table. Like, this is not an ideal situation for a lot of people. So we just need to kind of keep that in mind as well. And, you know, I think in terms of one of the questions that came in around this is like, how do we really help ensure that our teams, we get the most out of our teams, even though they have all of these stresses going on in their lives. And I think the best thing you can do as a leader is focus on the human, you know, and make sure that you are nurturing that relationship and taking the time at the beginning of a call or in a message to check in and ask how people are doing. Take that extra 10 minutes to really dig in and ask how their workspace is. Ask if there's any way that you can support them better. Because let's face it, if we all change to this model long term, people are still going to need to transition and adapt after all of this settles down. People are going to finally have the time to maybe get that desk that they need, or get a new chair. But right now, that's just not the reality for a lot of people. So people are just kind of struggling to survive. So that's kind of my take on where that's at currently in terms of productivity. Another thing that's really important to remember is that as you transition to remote work, you no longer have that signaling of the commute of when the day starts and ends, right? So you can either really embrace that and say, great, I'm going to wake up really early and get some things done before my team's online. I'm going to really get in that focus, kind of flow, deep work mode. And then I'm going to take a long break in the middle of the day. I'm going to, you know, go for a long walk outside if I can do that right now, or do some exercise, take a nap because I need to recharge, get back online later and finish up the day. You have more flexibility, which is great. But it's something to be managed and it can be a challenge. And with that also comes expectations for working hours with your team. And so there's a lot going on there in terms of which roles are best for teleworking. If you have a computer and you mostly work on a computer, you can work remotely. That it's kind of as simple as that.
Thank you, Megan. And I have different questions that I will cluster. And I will cluster more in terms of trust and also management, people management. So we have several questions saying, okay, how, on the one hand, you supervise your team members. On the other hand, how you build trust. You were also mentioning other parts on how you build and maintain morale, but also how do you maintain also confidentiality? Yeah. So how do you treat that? How do you solve conflicts? How do you deal with that when it's about remote working? So the balance between trust, management, people supervision. So Liam, do you want to start on this one?
Sure. Well, so it's been ironic because the last couple of weeks have just been insane. We've gone from a relatively large remote team in the remote workspace to governments asking us how to those questions. How do you stay secure? I'll give you a perfect example. Is a lot of governments require constant IP tracking in order to actually even be secure when you're working from home. So we provide that solution with Time Doctor, where you could say, okay, if you're working on files that are connected to a virtual machine, you need to be able to see all the data that goes in and out. And that's a legal requirement just in terms of security certification. These are things that inside of tech startups, we don't really look at, but if remote work wants to get into the mainstream, that's like a very, very clear requirement. You can't do banking, you can't do accounting, you can't do any of that stuff without that type of technology deployed. And then secondarily to that, just in terms of like what we've seen over the last couple of weeks, it's the component, I think, of trust really comes down to measurement. And we see Time Doctor actually as like a Trojan horse with regards to remote work, or at least we did until maybe a few weeks ago, which was the number one question that we would get in large corporate, KPMG, Deloitte, all of these large companies that we work with, is well, how do I know what my people are doing when they're working from home? And that is just the reality of where the situation is. And that's come from something as a kind of nice to have to an absolute necessity, particularly in terms of companies that require that type of technology and those types of certifications. So what we've said is you need to be able to measure exactly what's happening inside of the company. And you need to measure that from a security certification perspective, but then also just from a general productivity perspective, because a lot of people now are in a higher state of anxiety. They don't necessarily know how to work remotely, and deploying that type of technology to create an interesting kind of in-between space is, in my opinion, the best solution at this point. I also don't necessarily think, for the audience that we're talking to right now, most tech startups with 10 people in them, as an example, don't need that type of technology, if I'm going to be completely honest. This is more for the larger remote work community that has just kind of been thrown on our lap. But the average worker is, a call center rep, a customer service agent, a salesperson. There are literally tens of millions of those people just in the United States that have gone remote today. And the numbers were 4% in 2018 in the United States were working full-time remotely. By our numbers, and we've just been talking to a couple other people in the space, we think it's around 70% right now that are working remotely. So this has been the largest shift in labor in the history of labor. And we're just now trying to get our heads around it. So I would say right now, everyone's just kind of going remote. And then the unfortunate component is that a lot of these other factors are going to kind of present themselves over the next couple weeks. And I'm just kind of acting as Chicken Little in a certain context, saying, hey, there are big problems that are going to be coming up the next couple weeks and you need to address them.
Any other of our panelists on trust? And
I think when it comes to trust, it really comes down to, I can say, when you manage a customer support team, it's super easy. I know exactly which one of my agents is online and doing the work. When we're talking about less work that requires, and it's super visible when you're online or not, I think it comes down to impact and measuring impact, and how does impact look like for what it is that you do. So as a manager, you want to be describing exactly, if you're a content writer, if you're a whatever it is that you do, how, what are the KPIs and what are the measurements that we take in order to see if you're successful at your job. And, it goes further than just remote work. Should a person work 6 hours a day or 11 hours a day? What does that, what counts as a good employee if you're working a lot or if you're providing a lot of impact?
Yeah.
When you have very good and defined measurements and KPIs, and it doesn't have to be a specific number that's super easy to track, like the amount of support tickets that you do. You need to get creative in many, many ways, but having these measurements and agreements, manager to employee, how does impact look like, and how are we going to measure it? We're going to measure it by day, by month, by quarter. These are super important things that instill trust. And once you have that mutual agreement on how am I going to measure this person's productivity, then you're golden. Trust is going to be there, and it's all about kind of fine-tuning that process as we go.
Yeah.
One of the things that has popped up for us, which is always difficult to tell managers and employers, is the work week and how it correlates to productivity. So as an example, the most successful type of sales rep, when we look at our metadata of our hundreds of thousands of users, because we can just basically pull out industries, and we use a lot of AI machine learning to be able to analyze what makes a successful sales rep successful, because we do an integration between Salesforce and HubSpot and see all the sales reps and then figure out what makes a sales rep successful. Average workday for a sales rep, an AE, is 4 hours and 12 minutes a day. So if you work 8 hours, you're actually not as successful as if you work 4 hours and 12 minutes. And we try to communicate this information as much as possible to managers to say, like, it's not about how long you work, it's about how productive you are and what actions you're going to be taking. And we see it very clearly because we just have this massive database to be able to look at all that metadata. And a lot of employers, unfortunately, disagree with that. I think that might also be something that changes over the next couple months, is measuring productivity, not necessarily how long you're working.
Yeah, to add to that, I was just going to say, I think an important distinction as we're all transitioning here is to remember that certain things need to be translated from the office to remote, but a lot of things just need to be built from scratch. So thinking about, creating a more trusting environment where you don't care about the hours that people are online, unless you're setting up a meeting cadence and you need people there for an all hands meeting, a weekly team meeting, those key moments where you need people to interact synchronously. Outside of that, if you're setting up a system where you want to be able to monitor who's online when and between the hours of 9 to 5, you're probably going about this in the wrong way, because what you're doing is you're trying to translate everything you were doing in the office, that kind of control over employee work hours, and you are losing out on the added benefit for the individual of having the flexibility. And you are going to, by allowing people to have that flexibility and be autonomous in kind of how they structure their day, long-term, they're going to be so much happier, more productive. It will lead to better retention for you. It will lead to better mental well-being, and it will just, it's just the better way to go.
Thank you. And as we are coming almost to an end, so if we can publish the poll. I know, Oriane, you're still there?
Yes, I am. Yeah. My camera is not gonna come back. It's already on.
No problem. We know that you are in the countryside. So we're coming to an end, and I would like to take a few more of the questions, but and these questions are relating more to the face-to-face time, the real contact, and how do you make sure that, for example, you were talking, Liam, about sales, but if you don't have the F2F face-to-face interaction, how do you deal with that? We had a webinar last week also with fundraising, and VCs that were saying, okay, we don't have the physical meetings, face-to-face meetings anymore. It's more difficult to really scan founders and make sure that we are making the right decisions. So would love to hear from you how to deal without that, let's say, face-to-face interaction, and how what are the concrete measures that can be taken to compensate that absence of face-to-face contact. So who wants to start? Maybe Oriane?
Yeah, if I can start. Actually, it's an interesting time because our team got way more creative in these circumstances. So we started lessons. So we're teaching to each others, not only within my team, but also random people that you've never heard of from the other side of the world. So you can subscribe online and you just suggest, okay, so for instance, myself, I'm giving French classes, but next week I'm going to learn about tarot reading. You can learn cooking recipes and you're going to cook together at lunchtime. You can definitely learn anything with anyone, just subscribe, and you create these kind of new connections. And it's interesting to see how you discover new hobbies from your colleagues, how you get to sneak peek into their lives and in more intimate ways, and you get some kind of different connection. And I would definitely feel like after these quarantine times, I miss face-to-face connections, but we could create some human interaction in different ways. And that's definitely like something I'd like to keep on having, and many employees are trying to keep on having. And it's interesting to see how this has been developed and all the initiatives that people started to support each other with YouTube or all the kind of connection we can have. And definitely this is something I feel like very inspiring for me.
Yeah, so creativity is one of the key words of what you're saying, is that and indeed I personally agree that these are times where we all need to be creative and make sure that we also evolve with the time. And it's interesting to see that in our audience, so everybody, most of the people have worked remotely, but what is really interesting is the last question, is that there is balance between those who have been, the morale has been affected by remote working negatively. Yeah. And so I think this is an interesting point to pick up for our next speakers. So how can we remediate or make sure that team morale culture is maintained? So who wants to pick this up?
I'll say that it's interesting. Right now, what we're seeing is that with this huge change, for our team, work is kind of like is stability, is that one same thing that they still come together with their team. Yes, it's on Zoom and it's not in the office, and they still wake up every day and do that same thing that they've been doing, and the world is going crazy, and there are unfortunate things that are happening around us. But work has kind of been, we've been lucky to, you know, still be afloat, and work has been kind of something that's stable, and that is, they're even more, the morale is even up right now. I think the challenge would be moving forward. Hey, you have, you know, salespeople and people who are doing customer support staring at a computer all day long and answering emails. That's really hard. And you don't even have that interaction with somebody going to make coffee and talk to someone. So looking into how much we can make the environment more collaborative for folks that their environment is not so much collaborative. If you were in a cubicle up until now working like that, and the only thing that kind of, you know, was the bright spot of your day is to walk around and talk to a colleague here and there, you need to create those interactions right now, and you need to be, as a leader, you need to kind of be purposeful about those. So we are taking an hour out of people's schedule to create more collaborative projects between two team members that may not have been, if we were in an office space, they were not collaborating at all. And just to create those collaborations, to really just create connection between one another and be intentional about it. So that's something that we've been doing. It's very different. People react to it in a different way. There's a reason why Megan and Liam chose to work remote as the thing that they like to do, and I didn't, for example. And of course, it's a different effect. You just have, as a manager, you have to be very, very much conscious to that. And like Megan said earlier, check in, ask how things are doing, and coming up with creative solutions on solving that.
And as we are arriving now to the end, we are between a few minutes over time, but we have some questions that have not been answered. One of on how to provide some remote skills teaching to teachers that I will be sharing with you that, Oriane, so that we can answer that too, because I think it's a very relevant question. How can we ensure that our teachers and professors have the skills to also do remote teaching? Yeah, but I will be sharing that with you. I want to thank all the participants, the attendees, also our speakers, Liam, Tom, Megan, and Oriane for making your time. We heard your last words, Tom, but maybe Liam, Megan, do you want to give us one last advice in terms of really maintaining and boosting morale for teams? I think it's very important that we look into this topic for concluding in a positive tone. Yeah, Liam.
Yeah, I don't know if I can necessarily give you, to be honest with you, a positive spin on this. I think what I can give you is some very, very actionable things that everyone should be doing within the next month.
Yeah.
Assess, build out your process documentation, audit all of the processes in your team, and then analyze what I like to call sacred knowledge. So what does one person do in the company that's absolutely critical to the functioning of the company? And if they were sick for 6 weeks, they couldn't do it and the company wouldn't function. You need to do that audit today. And you need to make sure that all of that stuff is written down. We've done cross-functionality. So our support team, as an example, marketing and sales and customer success can all do support. And we've actually we're in the process of cross-training everyone, because the harsh reality is you're probably going to see 20% of your team sick at one point in the next few months. So you need to be able to prepare for that. Again, these are strategies to get you through this so that you can be successful out the other end. The other big factor is get some health help for all of your team members if you can afford it. I'm going to not necessarily be biased. We've used Talkspace before. We've used BetterHelp before. These are two fantastic resources that you can take. They're remote. So you can literally have someone pop up on a Zoom call and talk through something with some of your teammates. I think that's also going to be really critical. And then the third thing is making sure that you're checking in. So we have everyone that I start every meeting with saying, how's everybody doing? And then at the end, I say, if anyone is having any issues, please reach out to me. And then when I do our one-on-ones, I really ask how people are doing out of 10. And I'm measuring that constantly every week to see whether or not that's dropping off. Because mental health isn't just something that happens or doesn't happen. It's kind of like the frog in the pot. And you need to be able to get out in front of those things, because chemical depression requires at least 6 months of therapy and usually some type of drug therapy to be able to get back to where you need to be. And that's also a thing that will sink your company very, very quickly.
Very actionable advice, and thank you for that, Liam. Megan, do you want to be?
Yeah, sure.
The conclusion.
So I would say first and foremost, these are really uncertain and unprecedented times, and it's challenging for everyone in one way or another. And I think come to everything we do with a human-centered approach, give people the benefit of the doubt, give people some room. And, if you work on a team and some of your team members have kids at home, make sure that your team knows that they never have to apologize if a kid comes into the video call, or if their kid is screaming in the background and they have to go help out. I think these are really important human things that you can do to extend empathy and really decrease those levels of anxiety that people are having. So that would be my overall suggestion. And then I think just keep in mind that some of the biggest challenges with remote work, no matter when you're doing it, whether it's in a crisis suddenly, as we're seeing now, or whether you're trying to do something sustainably long-term, is making sure that you are providing structure to your team, that you are helping them avoid isolation, so increasing connection between those team members, and that you are helping them avoid burnout. The lack of structure, isolation, and burnout are three things that are going to really kind of tank a remote work process and make the experience really less successful for businesses and individuals.
Thank you, everybody. I know that we have taken a bit more minutes, but it was so interesting to get all your advice, expertise, and experiences that I think it has been a very useful session for all our audience that will also be continuing actioning through all these days and weeks via emails and showing what the great piece of advice that you have given us. Thank you once again to all our partners. And really, please stay engaged with us. If you have any question that we have not answered, please send it to us via email, connect with us online also, and also please keep in touch and stay healthy and stay safe. Thank you, Liam. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Megan. And thank you, Oriane. And thank you for the team at EYAF that they have made this second webinar, but also the first a success, that they are working very, very hard to make this happen. They have showed a great resilience in adapting to the online very fast, and I want to thank them also. And please stay in touch, and thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Stay safe.
Thanks. Bye-bye.